Last standing left. What do you want to know? Who's being last sitting left? I see a few familiar faces who've been here all day. Who's new that hasn't been in the previous sessions? So 2 people. 3 people. But this is good because we'll just integrate it. We're going to make this one a really, not casual in that you won't get a lot of information, but we're going to make it really interactive with you. Let's see if we can get to the bottom of campaigns. I have some wonderful, wonderful people on the panel here. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. They're all amazing people, and I'll say good things about them in the future. But do you want to kick off, Ranjini?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my name's Ranjini Joshua. I'm the owner of the Silver Telegram, which is actually a PR agency, but we're a full-service communication firm that started doing crowdfunding projects in 2012. So we do everything from content creation to social media to building rewards, connecting people with partners, things like that. So everything from beginning to end from a campaign, and then our main, I guess, focus is media relations as well. So.
Great. How many campaigns do you do with a year?
A year, probably.
And what kind of size? Yeah,
about 15 to 20 campaigns, raising anywhere from, I would say the lowest campaign is probably about 25K to, 200K as a goal amount. But we just finished a campaign that raised 680. So that was good.
So what's the difference between a campaign that raises 680 and a campaign that raises nothing?
Preparation.
All preparation.
Preparation,
okay.
yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And next we have...
Hello, my name is Tatiana Lüthi. I'm a UX brand and design strategist. So what I do is I help entrepreneurs and startups and community-oriented companies help an authentic and relatable brand. And I also use UX and brand strategies to create women's conferences. So I've produced multiple women's conferences. It's all about women's empowerment, women's development, women's leadership, and entrepreneurial skill building. And the X factor within all of that is that I use design thinking methodologies and UX and brand strategies to put it all together.
So Arturo and Tatiana are going to get on really well because they're in the same place. But you're going to notice as you go through this panel that when the last panel that we had were all crowdfunding experts. Everybody was either equity crowdfunding or crowdfunding in. This time around, even though Jason is really heavily involved in them, really Ranjini is the only one that is. And it's because I want to bring our focus to what the product should look like, the importance of brand when you're doing something. As I mentioned earlier on, this is not about us faking to the consumer what we have. It's about us really thinking about what it is that we have and how we get that message across to people, which is incredibly hard to do. So it's going to be a really fun one. And Arturo.
My name is Arturo. I run a design and brand studio called Kluge. Much like Tatiana, we focus on the foundation of your message, your brand essence, who you are, your story, your goals, and try to synthesize it and simplify it across all your touch points. Typically, we start with the website, but we'll expand ourselves into both offline and social touch points. And it's all about building that consistency, building that story, and bringing your value and communicating it very clearly across your user, your consumer.
And how aligned is brand and design? Because you call yourself a branding and design agency. You don't say branding agency and include design in there. Why is that?
Right, we probably have similar but differing answers. I mean, so this design is problem solving, and there's design thinking, right? So it's almost like a methodology to simplify the messaging, and brand is more like maybe the visual system, the essence behind it. It's they're working together, but the brand has more of the style and the tone and the message, and then the design is more maybe the method and the way you develop it.
Okay, good. Which
I
comes first, the chicken or the egg? Okay, please.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. They go together. And so the way I distinguish the difference between design and brand is the brand is more about the experience that you're having with the entirety of the brand, like the relationship that you're having, the relationship that you're having with a brand. And the design part, to me, is more about the relationship we're having maybe with the particular product and how it has been designed. So that's how I look at it. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Nice. Okay. No fighting. That's good. Like that. Okay, Jason.
I'm Jason Fishman. I'm a marketer, partner in a digital agency. Worked many agencies over the years, in-house marketing teams, and led a product marketing division for Mobile and Tablet Advertising Network. I'm a partner in DNA, which is big brand marketing strategies for startup to mid-level businesses. So we build campaigns to reach target audiences everywhere they go online. And the key performance indicators, whether it's e-commerce sales, leads, app installs, or crowdfunding, we can build algorithmic strategies to produce those results. We're also partners with a crowdfunding agency called Blackbox and have seen success on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, campaigns this year on the reward-based side, as well as Fundable and Flash Funders on the equity crowdfunding side. We have one campaign that's produced 7 figures in funding now on Fundable, so somewhat comfortable in equity crowdfunding space, although it's evolving at a rapid pace. So, we're following up with the day-to-day to learn more strategies and really see that as the channel startups will go to seek funding in years to come here. So, very excited about that whole movement and have nothing but nice things to say about crowdfunding as it creates ambassadors, community, and involvement with your target audiences and your brand.
So what's the differing approach for an equity crowdfunding campaign from a marketing perspective and a rewards-based crowdfunding campaign?
Sure. So the biggest thing for me, I run the advertising, would be data. So
imagine you're selling to me, right? I'm a potential customer. Sure. And I'm gonna use you. Maybe I've got a campaign. I don't have a lot of money. Maybe I'm looking for 100,000 campaign. I've got maybe $5,000 or so. Yeah. So talk me through why. And I've got a movie. Would a movie be good for equity crowdfunding, or probably works as well?
Depends how it's structured. You would see it more on the reward-based side. Because it's more of the B2C channel, and again creates ambassadors for your brand. But it can certainly be done for entertainment. From there, the biggest thing for equity crowdfunding right now is reaching accredited investors. So when I buy advertising on an ad exchange, I can also buy data. There's over 30 data providers we use, and from there I can target individuals with over $1 million in assets outside of their primary home, which is an accredited investor. So if I'm serving ads only to those users, I'm then remarketing to the users who have visited the crowdfunding page. I can bring that very niche audience back to the page over and over again. And the beautiful part about equity crowdfunding, speaking from the performance side, is we need far less conversions to be effective. So with one of our clients on Fundable, if they receive 3 leads and those leads turn into active investors, even if one of them does, it's going to produce far more of an impact for them than if we produced 30 on the rewards-based crowdfunding side. So being able to access the right data to reach the right individuals online is how we've seen great success from advertising on equity crowdfunding campaigns. Although I'd also recommend different content marketing and influencer marketing channels for you, stuff that can be done in-house to make your campaign and full digital presence more effective.
So let me hold you for a sec then. So we've decided I'm not going to do equity crowdfunding because I don't want to give away a percentage of my company. Sure. And I want to go down the rewards-based route. What platform are you going to suggest that I go on? And why? And then what are you going to suggest I'm going to need to spend? I know you mentioned keywords and buying data as well, which will be interesting. Can you just bring us a little bit deeper into that and tell us what platforms you prefer and how they possibly help, and then what you do?
Yeah, I would recommend. And
I'm going to bring Rangini in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, I would recommend Indiegogo. And I do work with people over there, but I would recommend Indiegogo because of their analytics. There's a lot more we can see that is going on in Indiegogo. I would then recommend Facebook and Google AdWords as the advertising platforms, as they allow you to place a remarketing and a conversion tracking pixel on those pages. What that means is you're going to be able to attribute all of the traffic to the ad source, can actually measure the conversion as well, so you can see exactly the return on investment your ads produced, as well as remarket to those individuals. And when it comes to ad buying, remarketing is where it's at. Remarketing is where you're going to see the strongest conversion rates. So remarketing can be looked at in different ways. If done properly, it's highly effective. It could also be looked at, quite honestly, as annoying as well. It's when you go to a website and then for the next few days, everywhere you go, you see an advertisement for that website. It basically allows us to place a pixel on the Indiegogo page that tags individuals. And then as we see those individuals, in this case on Facebook or on one of the sites within the Google Display Network, we're able to serve them an advertisement. At best, I shouldn't say at best, but let's say a standard conversion rate of a website is 2%. 2% of your visitors convert. That means 98 out of 100 visitors didn't convert. However, some of them had intent. I'm going to come back to this. Oh, let me finish this up. Getting pulled, to drop the kids off at soccer practice, whatever it may be. So to be able to serve an advertisement to those 98 out of 100 people, to remind them, is going to be far more effective than an advertisement to a blank audience, to someone who's unaware of your brand. So by us being able to serve advertisements to that audience, we see amazing results in terms of cost per acquisition, which is the cost to acquire a consumer from advertising, which we measure in the analytics. For the campaigns we're running right now, it's where the single channel we see the best results from our advertising. So to recap, I would recommend Indiegogo, and I'd recommend Facebook and Google AdWords as advertising platforms. I'd recommend testing many different audiences with both of those programs. Definitely leveraging the display network of Google specifically for remarketing, and then optimizing for performance. Whatever's producing the best results during key points of your campaign, make sure to ramp up. And if you see it working, and clear channels to, hey, if I increase these campaigns, I'm going to be able to hit my goal. Look for those, activate those, and have a budget ready, an incremental budget beyond just your initial budget, ready to really take advantage of those opportunities.
How much budget should you have?
It's a great question. More is always better, but if you let's say a campaign's 30 days, right? And there's different recommendations for campaign length. 45 on the earlier panel seemed to be the hot spot. I really like that answer. 30 to 60 days is the campaign, but let's say it's 30. $3,000 is $100 a day. If that's split between the ad networks, that's 50 on Facebook, 50 on Google, which isn't a tremendous amount. It is enough to get good results, though. I would say looking at $3K as your minimum ad budget is a good place to be. You can definitely be effective and see some results with 1,000 and 1,500, but I would really look to have that budget available to drive new people to your site, to your Indiegogo page. And if you're playing somewhere in the 3 to 10K range, you're in a good place. I'd also want to add, and I know this is a long answer, but to look at your campaign as thirds. The first third should be raised from your friends and family, people in your immediate network. It should be up on the platform as soon as possible. If it's the first day of the campaign, yes, that's social proof. Journalists don't want to cover your campaign if they're $0 funded. People who aren't familiar with your brand feel uncomfortable getting involved if there's nothing there. If you're a day in and you have 30% of your campaign raised, you're in a much better place. The second third should be attributed from marketing. PR, advertising, influencers, that should all put together your second third. And only that final piece should be people who are just exploring around Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Brands often look at that backwards and expect just to see results by putting it live on the site, and that's not the case. I would stress that when planning your campaigns.
Great, thanks. Tatiana, okay, so we're just about to start the campaign. What do you do with people regarding brand? And how important is it on a level of either success or failure with something like a crowdfunding campaign, how you approach the brand?
Well, I look at the brand as a movement. So it's something bigger than just a service or a product that you're trying to create. So I look at it as a whole entire movement, something that you stand for. You have a certain philosophy. You want to make a difference with something, with your vision or that product that you're bringing on the market. So using brand strategies are very important in defining what that is. What are your philosophies? What are your values? Who are your users? Why is it important, the difference that you're going to make? And how is it relevant to them? So, what's your original question?
On the brand, how do you start working with your client on the brand? So that's the vision of which I totally get. But then when you're taking someone like me and I say I'm looking to start a campaign, right. I want to do it in 2 weeks' time.
Through a strategic process.
Would you allow me to do a campaign in 2 or 3 weeks' time, starting the brand? And how long does it take?
Right.
And Just bring us a bit deeper, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't understand the brand process. I think a lot of people think, oh, that's cool. You know, I know my concept. I'm going to sit around with some smart people, and within a few days, I'm going to come up with a good brand. And I don't think it quite works like
So
that.
thank you for saying that. It's definitely a process. It's not something that happens, in a week. It's a process.
Why are you looking at me?
Well, I have a reason. So, like I said, initially what we do is we really start defining the vision. We want to also define, what the values are, what is the culture, what's the brand voice that you want to create, who are all of your users, and what's the X factor. We want to really create a very inspiring story, a storyline that we can tell. And from there, what we're able to do is we will extract all of that. I'm really getting into your head. I need to understand your vision. From there, we can then create a visual representation and a narration and a story for your crowdfunding.
Beautiful. And Arturo, can you just take us a bit deeper into that? Because I know you also work on the development as well. So you'll take it all the way from the brand, all the way through to building the site and everything else. So imagining this is a new company that's just starting, where do you take it and how do you take it through, and what type of people within your organization do it in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of branding, just moving from what Tatiana's saying, I mean, movement, great word for it. I'm gonna use it. But it is your sense of direction, and sort of that's implied in everything, in how you parlay it to the way you're speaking about it, the way you want to visualize it, the colors that you're speaking about, the technology platform that you're going to choose, the way in crowdfunding, the way the video works, and the way the messaging is, and how you're expressing yourself to your customers, how you're taking a conversation. So all of that is branding, right? And so a branding process can be very quick or very tedious. There might, like for us, it's a lot. The very first part of everything we do is understanding where our client is in terms of knowing their own sense of direction and how aligned they are if there are multiple people of them. That is the hardest part. And when people are talking to us, we're assessing how much they know themselves. That's what we're looking at, and that's how we price, frankly. It's like, oh, this guy has no idea, or this guy is going to spin their wheels. So like, that's going to be a longer process. Yesterday, I did a branding exercise for a friend of mine, and we did the website, the business cards, the logo, the color palette, all in about 6 hours worth of work. But it's because we had these conversations, and that doesn't happen very often. I do processes where the client wants it to be done in 2 months and it gets done in 6 months. But it's all how clear you are about your direction. And for us, going to Brian's question, the team that we use is development, UX, UI and branding sometimes are separate. So we have like a person that's more laying it out on the digital interface, depending the complexity of your digital properties. And then a person that's more focused on your textures and your patterns and your icons. And we can separate that, or it's one person. So the team require also, it's how deep your message is, how much you have to communicate. That might require more effort, and then how many touch points do you have? When we start applying a visual system, it's like, are you just going to live online? Well, that's a simple process in a way. It can be flat. But if you're also going to live offline, then we got to layer your design. We got to think about your visual system more deeply. So team definitely varies based on the scale and the complexity of your messaging. But it all starts with understanding a sense of self. The very basic process. You don't need a brand expert, but just have somebody to talk to about your values, your goals. Make sure that your direction is going linearly all together in one place, that it can all be you. And it's how you clothe yourself and how you think of yourself. That all affects, your company and your brand. So it all starts with knowing yourself.
I do. I think this is so important. Like, I very methodologically set today's agenda together to start off with the pitching, so we could see the challenges that people have pitching their idea. That's only a symptom. The challenge that they have is they don't know what their brand is. They don't know what their value proposition is, and most don't. As you go to pitching competition, you see 80, 90% can't explain to investors, can't explain on crowdfunding platforms. It's because the brand has not been completed. It's because a couple of great visionary moments have happened, and then after that, there's nothing. So I really wanted to finish this. We're going to bring it back around to crowdfunding, but I really wanted to finish the session today in a place where you start to question the brand of everything you've done so far, to an extent that you start bringing other people in and you ask them, do you understand what my value proposition is? Actually, let me rephrase it. What is my value proposition? And you're not saying it to people who are your friends or people who you know you. So I want to just place it as a placeholder. I think the success even of crowdfunding campaigns is massively. Ranjini, weigh in. What you got for us? Crowdfunding. Inspire us.
Just a general, kind of very broad statement you made. I mean, I'm just seeing kind of the flow from, inception to design to kind of the next step, which I guess is where we stand. And I think for us, we don't even start working with crowdfunding campaigns if they don't have a website at least in mind or started, because if they don't have that stuff ready, it's really, really difficult, because we mostly work with people who are developing a brand, like they're saying, and not necessarily individuals. So we're not usually doing individual projects. They're either they're film companies or they're a lot of our clients are technology startups or lifestyle startups. So they really do have to have that brand understanding before they even go into it, because creating the campaign from top to bottom, very logistically, like just actually entering the text, if you don't know who you are and what you're giving people, you can't have a successful campaign. And that's maybe 50% of the reason why any of our failing campaigns fail, is because the message is just so convoluted. They think it's great because they've been thinking about it and they've just been repeating the same message to themselves for a while. But then when we say, hey, your actual message, you're not actually telling people your value proposition, the very first line, the title of your campaign, those two things need to be very specific to your product and the value that you're bringing to people that are going to purchase that product.
What else is important in your campaign? So thinking about all the other things like the video, the perks that you give, and just talk to me about the relevance of that importance from a perspective of failing or not.
I think most people would tell you the video is one of the most important parts of the campaign, but you can also mess it up drastically. So I think the text of the campaign also needs to follow the video very, very closely. So there's some people who will just look at the text, and there's some people who will just watch the video, and then you get that great group of people that will see both. Yeah. So those two things I think are almost equally as important, but the video maybe like 10% more. Because people are much more visual than they are not. And the importance of the video, the mistake most people make there is that it's long or that it doesn't actually relay the message that they're trying to relay.
How long should it be? A good video?
A good video, I think between 2 to 3 minutes. I've seen videos short as 1 minute, 30 seconds. So, and I've seen long videos too, as long as like 5 minutes. Some brands that have a little bit more awareness about themselves can actually get off with something like that. But I don't think most brands, especially startups, especially people who are doing individual or singular projects, they don't have that much awareness where they can fill 5 minutes successfully. Yeah. So I wouldn't do it.
Videos are tough, actually. Everybody tries to be really funny. They're trying to be really funny or really emotional in videos, and we're just not good at that stuff. Everybody wants to be the Dollar Shave Club.
Right.
Well, so what's your recommendation on how we should do a video? Is there anybody in here doing a video for crowdfunding campaigns? Okay, good. So we got a few people doing videos. So what tips can you give as to what people should try and do? Should they try and be funny, or should they try and?
Well, you know what? That's really individual based on the project. I wouldn't be able to tell you like an overlapping, like everyone should be funny. Funny videos are great if that works with what you're doing. If you're working for a nonprofit charity raising money for dying children, you probably don't want to be funny. Yeah. So it really is in relation to that. My advice is just really, I think, getting a really good grasp on what your overall message you want to relay to the audience, and putting that at the very beginning of the video. That should be one of the first things you tell people, and everything else is support for that.
Perfect. So. And perks you love, perks you hate. What should we do? What should we not do?
I think everyone should do research on other campaigns that they really love and see what kind of prices work for them. And if they have something similar, try to price around those things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I heard
a lot of talk actually before. I'm going to run through a few campaigns in a couple of seconds that I've just been part of or very close to myself. But a lot of people are starting to say that T-shirts and mugs and stuff, they're just a nightmare for
It's
perks,
a nightmare for the campaign creator. I don't know why a person who's creating a film goes into, well, I do, not for that, but I guess there's a lot of times it's a product that's completely unrelated to a T-shirt, and now you have to produce T-shirts. That's a nightmare. People don't need T-shirts that badly. So, I mean, stay away from things you're not already doing.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, and I got two really good examples just in the last couple of weeks. One was a movie called the Crowdfunding movie, called the Coaching movie, and they raised $850,000. And they did it in a really smart way. And I'm just wondering, is there any way that we could maybe elaborate on some tips that people could do this? They wanted to create a coaching movie, but they weren't that great at coaching. So they went to all of the greatest coaches in the world, like people, Chicken Soup for the Soul and all those types of guys, and they said, "You're so amazing, you're so wonderful, you should be in a movie." And they're like, "Okay, that's great." And they said, "And what we should also do is we should sell your DVDs and your books and everything. We should do it all on the crowdfunding campaign." And they got about 50 amazing coaches, not because they're amazing coaches, but because they just touched a lot of people. Those coaches had hundreds of thousands of people on their list, and they were all ego-driven, and they got the campaign up to like $850,000.
Well, I mean, you have 50 influencers. That's gonna. If it doesn't get up to $800,000, I'd wonder about their influence.
Have you had any other companies that have done campaigns like that? Maybe you want to weigh in as well, Jason. I just thought it was a very smart way of actually getting the community behind you, not based on the fact that they love you or you're a nice person or they really care, but just based on the fact of pure ego of being
we did work on one campaign that had William Shatner in it, so that helped a lot. So the fact that there was a celebrity involved obviously is always a win situation. But that's how a lot of the films that get supported on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, wherever, the more successful ones definitely have celebrities tied to them. And even campaigns that are product related that have celebrities tied to them actually work pretty well too. But that's just an influencer campaign. So
yeah, okay. And Jason, I know you know a lot about influencer campaigns.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on them? I know we discussed them in the last panel and it was kind of mixed reviews on influencers. What do you think?
It's all about execution. In general, you want to have your crowdfunding campaign associated with the cause. If you can show that it's bigger than just this project, you can then have everyone who has an emotional connection with that cause involved. You then want to reach out to as many organizations as you can that are associated with that cause. Everything from brands, organizations, and influencers. And finding the right influencers that are relevant for your cause and have a real emotional connection with your audience can be very powerful. We often work... Question?
How do you approach a brand or an influencer like that if you don't already have an existing relationship with them?
Sure. I would start with basic outreach. Having some type of messaging that can be switched up a bit and personalized for each influencer. And they generally have channels available for communication. Outside of crowdfunding, I work with Instagram influencers extensively, and they'll generally put an email address on their Instagram account that then makes it available for you to contact them. To tell you the truth, the majority of those have rate cards because they're approached by brands right and left. And we would then look to set up a calendar so that every day we have one or multiple influencers posting, and that gets back to execution. You want to have a steady flow of influencers. You want them posting at peak times of the day. I kind of like 9 in the morning and 5 p.m. Pacific time because it sets up for East Coast and kind of peak hours where people are looking at their social platforms, their devices. You want to have some view on the analytics to see what's working and not working and shifting things around. And then if you have the opportunity to work with the influencer on organic messaging, that's great. You can provide them with the messaging that you want, but if it comes from them, it'll be more authentic. And tapping into their engaged audience can produce significant results. So strategic partnerships from brands, organizations, and influencers will allow you to tap into their audience, but it needs to be done carefully.
What do you pay for that? If you want an influencer to post, I mean, how does it work? What do? They mention it to 1 million people and you pay $100?
Yes.
100, yeah.
So on Instagram specifically, yes. Generally, $20 to $500 would put you in the range of 10,000 to 2 million followers. There's some that we pay a couple $100s for, and we reach 1 million people. And you'll see traffic spike afterwards. Instagram's interesting because there's no link. They have to then click on your page, and then from your page go to your bio to then click over to the crowdfunding page, or in many cases for us, an e-commerce page. But by the time they do that, the likelihood they'll convert is much higher. We've done this very effectively for some subscription-based products that we work with, and they've built a majority of their user base from there. If someone's referring you, if a friend of mine says, hey, you have to watch this movie on Netflix, I'm far more likely to watch it than if I see an advertisement for it. Now, it is a mix, it is a balance. There's no, hey, just do this. But if you could leverage the voice of influencers who have a very engaged audience, particularly if they have an association with the cause of your project, you can expect results to follow.
Nice. Actually, hit me with some questions. Let's do some questions now so you don't miss
Can
it.
I just go back to his question real quick about the brand partnerships? Mm-hmm. Just a small caveat to that. If you are going to be involving brands, I would definitely plan some time into that, because they don't all move very quickly. So you have to realize, you'd like to have it tomorrow. They might like to have it 3 weeks from now. I would just plan to bake some time into that relationship.
I'd like to add to that too. Yeah. Influencers, I find, post 25 to 35% on time. That's extremely labor intensive.
Brilliant.
Is it because they have so much stuff and so many other requests that they're putting into the pipeline?
Yes, and with some of the influencers we work with, it's not their primary job. It's something they do on the side, something that they don't handle they don't manage as an actual business. So there's a lot of hand-holding involved. As an agency, that provides us an opportunity to negotiate added value. So if someone doesn't post on time, we look to receive additional posts from them, but it's extremely labor intensive.
You got to watch them all, so don't trust anyone is what you're saying. You've got a question down there.
It's going to vary drastically, and I'm just jumping in here. Sorry. It's gonna vary drastically. A 1% engagement rate of posts is pretty standard. If on Instagram, if we're seeing that, we can say, hey, that's a good audience there. But it'll vary. The action to follow that will vary as well. And that's something you can look at when identifying influencers, is how engaged is their audience? What percentage of their audience is liking their posts? Some of the influencers out there have more of a response rate than major celebrities. And brands identify that and will pay them greater levels than they would for a celebrity. And there's studies to show that as well. Some of the biggest celebrities, a large portion of their audience, in many cases, can either be fake or unresponsive. It's just something they are able to recognize, so they'll press like. Where to follow, an ordinary YouTube star, Instagram influencer, there's some level of alignment there. They seem more in common. The referral from that person, even though it can see, you can see that it's paid, goes a much further distance.
Nice. Ranjini?
I think product relevance is really important to do there. I mean, you can't pitch a kid's toy to a beauty blogger. I mean, it just doesn't work. So obviously the conversion is going to be a lot lower. I mean, if most of them want to do organic content or content that seems authentic and close to what they already cover. But if it does seem outside of their reach, or something that they wouldn't normally do, or something that audience just wouldn't buy, you have to pay attention to that. So you have to find influencers that really are very, very relevant, highly relevant to your product or your film or your brand.
Hey, are there any, I'm going to get to this, this is great, there's so many questions. I just also want to know, are there any brand questions? There should be. You have one of the top brand development houses here in LA, and you've got a brand specialist. So if anybody's got a product that you're thinking of doing a campaign on, this is the time to ask questions and to try and get answers on, especially if you want to qualify your hypothesis. You have one over there? Okay. What was the question?
promoting branding and feature film.
So how do you brand and promote a feature film? Probably how do you brand a feature film? And you can jump in the promotion.
What kind of film?
You want my elevator pitch?
Yeah.
It's a coming-of-age story that took place in the 60s at the San Diego-Tijuana border. It's a friendship love story.
Who do you think your audience is?
Donald Trump.
Young adults and Hispanic, hopefully. And half the cast is American and half is Mexican.
Got it. What's that, like the buy? Is that like a funny, like, what's?
No, it's a drama.
It's a drama.
Yeah.
So you're looking for young adult drama, 60s kind of retro look. Could be like a millennial audience, young adults, or?
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's what we're looking at when you're looking at branding, right? It's like really understand who your audience is, and it sounds like, I mean, at least from the little conversation, we're getting one target audience here. So then go very young, spend on the internet, go all out in terms of like the way that you design, go youthful. Don't try to curtail to like the guys that are that lived in the 60s. If your hypothesis is this is a young audience, and stick to that and go after that and go young, go digital, go Instagram, go Snapchat, and put a youthful look and feel behind you, and stick to your guns and test it and see what happens, see if that is your audience.
I've heard that baby boomers and also might be because of nostalgia.
Yeah. So there now you got two different audiences. Now you got to figure out which one's the most profitable. Really, I mean, you can do testing for that.
Can I actually throw something in there?
Yeah, let's stick on this for a second because it's really interesting.
So, so I think this is an interesting conversation. So what we would do to go through the strategic process is we will be asking you all of these questions so that we actually can create that clarity, because there's no way that we can give you branding advice in 5 minutes without knowing who you are, what you stand for, who your users are, why you're doing this, where's this passion coming from, and what's the difference that you're trying to make with this movie, right? So that's why it's so important to have a strategic branding process to create clarity, definition, and direction for your branding.
Well, as a writer, there's something about this situation that tells me to sit down, for months and work out a story. And I'm sure this is a common experience for writers. So it would seem to me that there is something sort of inherent in the process that you could then take into the branding process.
Absolutely, because we're getting in your head, right? Through the strategic process, we're actually trying to get into your head and bring into existence what you're trying to create.
And how much would that cost?
That's the bottom line.
Among the four of you, I want the best deal.
Well, I'm going to answer it this way. The whole part, actually, what's really great about UX strategies is that during the discovery phase, which is when we are asking you all of these questions, we get an idea of the scope that we're looking at. And it will inform us, it will inform the designers, and it will inform the developers how big your branding project is going to be. That's why it's really hard to give a number at the beginning. We have to figure it out as we talk to you.
Yeah, and let me add some more clarity to this, because I think, again, it's a great question and it's a great sequence of questions. I see branding as more important than the website, than the development of the website, actually, because if you don't have that right, your website's going to go to crap anyway. Right. But if you go to a website developers, I know that there are website developers who are kids who've just got out of school, and they're amazing people, and you just got lucky and you found someone for like $3,000 or $5,000. And I know there are companies in LA that will go to like Pivotal Labs, $250,000 to develop a website. So you've got the whole spectrum, and you could have your son who just happens to be really good and to build something. So you can get, look, a lot of it will depend on the budget that you have. And if you don't have more than $1,000 or $1,500, can you get somebody to help you? Yes. If you don't have even $1,000 or $1,500, you just go online and look at the brand strategy. These are, when we went through branding for our company with Tatiana, it was a 7-week process. And it should be a 7-week process. This is your dream, your baby, your vision. You should be spending all of your time on this. Who are the people who are going to care? Is anybody going to care? Maybe not. In which case, you just make it into a hobby and make it a little bit less expensive. But if they do care, you have to find out. And Ryan spoke this morning, I think Ryan mentioned this morning about there's only one problem you're fixing. I mean, there may be multiple problems, but there's one major problem, which is the overriding problem for the audience that you're trying to get to. So for you, there will be one overriding audience. As you go deeper and deeper and deeper into it, you may find out, I found out myself, that my audience were not my audience. That was the really phenomenal thing that I went through in the brand process. But it's a really important thing to go through. So if you don't have budget, the guys here will say it to you. Do it yourself and try and do it. But they'll also say, and this goes to everybody here, don't think of not doing. Don't think that your genius is going to make a great business and that people will understand your vision. You have to go through this process. It's really good. Questions on brand? Yeah.
Yeah, well, related to pricing, you know, you're super cash strapped, you want to go through the process. Is there like that first discovery phase? The price on that to then say, okay, a month later I got some more money, okay, what's the next step? Is that possible to do that?
Absolutely. Just speaking, so I'm coming more from the agency angle. I think you're consultant.
Yeah, that's more for, yeah.
Yeah. So there is a difference, right? So for me, any project typically involves 4 or 5 people minimum of my team to get in there. So obviously I'm a higher price point. I'm just full disclosure, I'm $30K minimum, and that's cheap. But an individual might be able to do consulting on $1,000 or $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 for Tatiana, but plus. But you know, it varies. But the thing is, it's like, where are you in the stage and what do you need? Our sort of niche clients, or like our sweet spot, is those growth companies that have gone through several processes, but now they're in growth mode. And so we come in and we do it with speed and we sort of optimize them. But you have to know where you're in. Maybe if you have a bootstrap budget like $1,500, which is nothing in many ways, maybe you're better off hiring like a couple of hours of a really high-end consultant that's just giving you high-level strategy and then getting a junior person to do the implementation, right? Like the real value of branding is going to come from the strategy. And people think of branding as the logo mark, the website, the brochure. Those are just deliverables. Like that's the easiest stuff of the gig. Like we do that like day in and day out. But like the hard part is the strategy. So put more value there. And when you're going to get senior expertise, be respectful of that time, and then sort of get that strategy. And if you are bootstrapped, you can sort of finagle with junior implementers. There are guys that do websites for $500. You can do it cheaper than that. But they are not going to be thinking about anything, and so that's what you got to bear in mind. It's the strategy that you want. That's branding.
Yeah, it's a beautiful point. Thank you. Next question. One more on branding, and let's jump back to crowdfunding.
Thanks. I've crowdfunded 2 documentaries successfully and consulted on others, and one of the things that I learned, the ones I consulted on, some of them were not successful in that they didn't raise the money, but they were successful in that they built a community around their product or their films, in my case. But I'm wondering if you would speak to the other benefits of crowdfunding other than just sending you money. So as far as brand is concerned, you must learn once you roll that out, even though you've gone through other strategy, the people that are coming to you now through that campaign are also going to help you alter that brand and refine it, right?
Absolutely. It's a community building what you're doing. So you're not just getting the money or the goal. You're building your community, and those people, as you said earlier, are ambassadors for your brand. So that's the really some brands don't need that money, frankly, and they still do it because of the process of getting those ambassadors.
Be careful. Ranjini, anything to add on that? I think it's a fantastic point. It's a totally good point. I actually have a guy who did a crowdfunding campaign, raised $100,000, had a beautiful product. It was 8 months ago. He still hasn't shipped 80% of his product to the people. And he was really keeping them up to date for a while, saying, hey, I'm really sorry. And at the end, they're going, you know what? We just friggin' hate you. And there's no way back from that. So, and all of that fits into the brand, all of that. This is an entire experience that your customer's having, and it has to be built from the very beginning. So, yeah, great point. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Brandy, question. Can you give us some tips or mistakes to avoid when we're trying to our brand process?
Great.
I would say think about it like who you are and think about who your customer is and try to keep that focus and try to keep that aligned. If you're putting if you think that your brand is perfect for 3 target customers, that's probably not true. You gotta try to simplify that. That's the biggest thing I see is like dilution of focus.
Tatiana?
So,
You,
speaking to what you said, keeping it relevant to your different customer segments. You know,
you can speak if you. I mean, I think I love taking specific examples when we're going through this. You're very welcome to use Expert Dojo as an example. No, you are. No, because it's a good example. It's a good example because our product didn't change, but the messaging mistakes that we were making was terribly important. And just by changing the messaging mistakes, actually has created just a different animal. So yeah, I'm happy for you to do that.
So I'll
Just
use
be
Expert
nice.
Dojo.
Okay.
Should I stay diplomatic?
Yeah, you can go through it. You can give the warts and all.
So, I think it's very, very important that we're being clear in the brand and in the storyline that we create. So let's just use the Expert Dojo website, right? When you go to the site, it's actually a little bit confusing, right? And so what we want to do...
Pretty picture, though.
...is...
Picture's cool. Like...
So it's really important that we create that clarity that we've been talking about, right? Who is Expert Dojo? What does Expert Dojo stand for? You know, who is Expert Dojo catering to? And so when I'm saying Expert Dojo, the same goes for you. You just, put in your company name, right? And why? What's the bigger, again, I'm always a big fan of, I look at brand as a movement. Why, right? So Expert Dojo is a movement. Expert Dojo is really committed in empowering startups and entrepreneurs to create a successful business. So we want to make sure that's all part in the rebranding of it. And also another thing to consider is I like to look at the homepage kind of like a front cover of the newspapers. You just want the most essential elements that are of value for your particular user so that you draw them in, they feel engaged, they feel inspired, and if they want to learn more, then they click on the call for action button to learn more about it.
Yeah, pretty good. Just let people understand what you actually do, as opposed to the entire vision all on one page. Great. Next question.
Did you have anything, Joshua, to contribute?
No, I'm writing notes, so I'm getting my consultation.
This is an area very seldom discussed, going through campaigns and everything else, which is why it's so important. Sorry, somebody had a question. You had a question.
When you first start your branding, do you start with your intangible assets or your tangibles? Or what is the ratio of your giving importance to each side?
Yeah,
he's asking what's the importance given to either your tangible or your intangible assets.
Well, I tend to put a lot of emphasis on the intangible one. For me, it's all about the emotions, the values, the culture that you're creating. What are the emotional benefits? Yes, we're going to look at what are the tangible results and impacts and benefits that you're providing with your company. But again, I tend to always focus on the emotional and the values and the culture that you're creating and that you're standing for with your company as part of a bigger movement. So that is super duper important. And then yes, we're going to have to go into tangible.
How do you convey the intangible message?
So
how do you correlate the intangible message?
Right.
How do you communicate the intangible message? Sorry, yeah.
I mean, I'll just be very specific in how I do it with my clients. I mean, I literally have a column process. Seriously. It's like if you imagine a whiteboard up here, imagine 6 columns in the back. And each column has a title on the top. I'm going to ask you very specific questions, again, about your culture. Who's your customers? What does your ideal customer look like? And I'm not talking necessarily just about demographics, but describing them. Are they ambitious? Are they driven? Are they seekers? Are they pioneers? So that's how we define the intangible values. So I do this in a column style. And then eventually what we do is we prioritize the top ones on each one of them, and we piece it together into an internal brand statement. This is not something that you would put on your website because grammatically it might not be correct. This is just what we need, the creatives, the designers, and the developers, to get an idea about your vision. Eventually, when we put it all together, you will be working with a copywriter, right? Somebody who's really good at the messaging. They will then take the concept and the essence that we came up with, and they will refine it for you.
Arturo, anything to add?
I think that's great. I'm also intangible first.
Yeah, beautiful. We buy with our emotion. We buy because we love stuff. Next question. Yeah.
So I have a personal branding question. I just found out that my boyfriend needs to have a kidney transplant. So I've been thrust into the world
I had a platform, just while you're thinking about it, I had a request through, I had this guy who was a good friend of mine before, and I got a email through, I can't remember what the name of the site was, but it was a site that said, things are not as good as they used to be. Let me tell you the story of how everything went horribly wrong. And I shared it with like 20,000 people as a dedicated, and a lot of other people did the same thing, and they went through it. I get there are some sites like this around, right? That do. That I'm sorry. Go on. You just brought up a.
I just had a question. Is the goal to create a movement out of it, or it's to help your boyfriend first and foremost?
I'm finding that we've had a number of people come forward, and for whatever medical reasons, they've not been compatible with him. And so, very personally, of course, the goal is to find him a kidney that works. But what I'm finding in the meantime is that a lot of people, if you wanted to give a kidney to him and you were not compatible with him, you might be with this woman. So you can then create these paired interesting things like all you're talking about branding and influencers. Inspirational. That's okay. Would be a very quick and clever way to find a way to reach them.
Well,
I've exhausted my personal network.
it's a very personal story, and it's very genuine, which is great. And I think your first step is maybe GoFundMe comes to mind as a good crowdfunding platform for this kind of stuff. And I would make it about your boyfriend, tell that story, put nice photos of him. And as you do the campaign updates, you can sort of talk about what you're seeing, this bigger ecosystem. So it can turn into a movement if you sort of feel that, and this sort of moment that created that awareness for you is your story, is your brand story, and will always be that brand story. And it can turn into something bigger. But the beautiful thing about that is that it's a very real human moment, and it's a real experience for you, and you're going through something very deep that you can sort of be very genuine about and open, and that's sort of great branding at its core. It's a very clear story.
Nice. We've got time for one or two more questions. Okay, or three.
My question starts on the base that we all do mistakes. And what would you recommend to take back to life a brand or rebrand the product?
So either optimize an existing brand or rebrand, or what was the?
Once, because of past bad results, the product and the brand itself got burned. What would you recommend taking consideration of the cost and the time that you are going to spend to bring back to life the brand? Is actually the product. What would you do? Rebrand it or take it back to life?
Well, like for example, I once consulted for Atari after they fell apart, and it wasn't the right team to revive Atari. So that's probably like go start another company. This one's kind of gone. But it depends on the factors, right? The story there was that the team that hired me to help Atari wasn't really Atari anymore. So we're not doing anything that's genuine. It's the opposite of the other story we just talked about. So you have to look at those kind of scenarios. Like, is this brand that died, did it die for the right reasons, or was its story unfairly told? Is it worth reviving, or is this story been there?
Because of bad management, a membership.
That's tough.
Well, if it's operations, then it's like, has your management improved? And then can we spin that? I mean, for example, Colombia as a country, we know it as a drug country, right? And like very dangerous. But actually in the last 10 years, it's been very, very safe. So what they did, their slogan is, the danger now is that you won't leave. So they highlighted it. So you can, like, as long as you have something real to say, you can be very blunt about where you've erred as well.
Yeah, I've said this a few times today, but we're in a real place of authenticity. Like, Bernie Madoff is still Bernie Madoff with a different fund, right? And I'm not suggesting, but I'm suggesting is the degree of pain that you're in is very relevant to the decision that you make. Like, Arthur Anderson, we're never, ever going to keep Arthur Anderson going. But they're all exactly the same directors in Accenture. All they did was they said, Arthur Anderson is burnt. There's no way we can ever take this back because of what we've done. But everybody knows that we are great consultants. So we're just going to start a brand new brand and spend money on it. I think the best point is the one that he just said there right at the beginning, which is, if the management was a major problem on the previous brand, then have all of the problems been fixed in your heart of heart? You're going to say, yeah. I know you're not even nodding, but if you were, you're going to think, yeah, immediately, because we always think we can fix whatever it is problem that we had. But when you look in your heart of hearts, you tend to find that it's not quite that simple. And I think when you get to that answer, you can work out, because you're the same as me and everybody else. And if I know, I'll give you a great example. There's an entrepreneur school over in the UK. And then they were very well known and great for a long time. And the top guy there he was one of the Dragon's Den guys, one of the, like the Shark Tank guys over here. And he's just been convicted of jail for something pretty horrible. That place is dead now. Like, he will never, ever be able to come back. And they can bring back other people, but if he's associated in any way with it. So that's just all about it. Just look at it. For me, if Expert Dojo made a mistake, then you can rebrand it possibly, or you can keep it the same because it's just a mistake. If Expert Dojo was found to be doing something horribly wrong, that means that Brian McMahon was found to be doing something horribly wrong. The problem is not Expert Dojo, the problem is Brian McMahon. I don't know if that helps, but it's a really interesting one. One over here? Yeah.
So, Tatiana, you were talking about the process of branding your film or your media. Is that the same process you would go through if someone was launching a product to the market? Is that the same process you would go through to identify and build a brand?
Yes. So there's multiple elements that we can add or remove depending what the client needs to achieve. So absolutely, it's also applied to define the features and functionalities for a product, for example.
Do you limit it to those 6 columns?
No, we have more than that.
She's got 20 pages.
My question is, does it go horizontally, would you say category by category, or does it go deep to keep drilling down?
Yes, I would say my process goes more deep to drill down and really get to the essence of it.
Perfect. Man with the cool hat.
Hey, thanks. I've been doing art and performance for like my entire life, and also edutainment, like educational entertainment, and I have like a lot of knowledge and inspiration I want to share with the world, and I'm trying to figure out the best strategy to go about doing it. Like, I've done a lot of the creative work, like art, music, performance, and now I'm trying to find the like strategy, the more technical side of things to share with the world.
It's a branding thing, right?
Personal branding. It's an interesting one. It's a cross between kind of coaching and branding.
Right.
I can tell you from a coaching perspective, like what we always look for in people's businesses is for them to write down, or for us to write down, I'm going to say them, for us to write down what are the things that we are amazing at. Truly amazing. And I don't think you were here this morning at the beginning when I mentioned it, but then you become a leader within those areas. Like, you become an amazing public speaker. You become really good at getting your message out. You find things which are really interesting. You try and get onto platforms whereby you can be heard. And by the way, there's a million conferences, there's a million podcasts, there's a million radio shows, there's a million live streams, there's a million places to actually get your message out and to find your audience out there. And then you find out if you really are amazing in that particular area. And if you are, you coin it. And that goes for anybody. It goes for Perez Hilton. It goes for anybody who found a particular niche that other people enjoyed. And then they just made sure that they used, this is the great thing about social media today. Any more comments just on the branding aspect of... Specifically to this gentleman. It's a toughie because you don't know yet.
I kind of like live like the brand, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I live the art that I create, the music that I create, and I embody it fully. And I've been doing a lot of underground events for a long time, and I want to like bring it above.
You mean make money from it?
Yeah.